Following our lecture on scientific writing, I welcome you now to this second lecture on how to choose a journal for submission. These lectures are really aimed at young researchers who embark on their career in getting their research published. And this research is intended to make you aware of some points that you should think about when you choose or when you think about where to submit your paper, to which journal to submit your paper. So this lecture will take you through these points. We look at the scope of the journal, indexing, impact factor, publication fees, open access, what to check prior to preparing a paper for submission, declarations, cover letter, followed by a word of caution and a summary. So first of all, the most important thing before you consider any journal for submission, the most important thing is to think about the scope of the lecture of the paper. Will your paper fit into the scope of this journal? You find different journals. There are general journals that publish general topics. So this is Lancet, BMJ Open. They accept topics from a variety of different disciplines in medicine and health and allied health professions, but these have to usually they want to be interesting also for a broad public, for broad readership. And then you have specialized journals such as Heart, Gut, Cancer, Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and many, many different other journals. These are interested in papers from their disciplines, and they look also to publish more specialized topics within their specialties. How can you find out what the scope of the journal is that you look to publish in? First of all, every journal has a website, and on this website they clearly define the scope of articles they look for publication. Secondly, if you're not clear if your article would fit into the scope, you can look at previously published articles in the journal and see if this kind of topic has been handled by your journal before, and this is an indication that maybe it would fit into the scope of that particular journal. Once you've decided on the scope, you want to make sure that the journal you look for is actually indexed, okay? If it is indexed on large search engines or literature websites such as PubMed, then it will be easy to identify and to find for other authors who look for this sort of other authors, other scientists, other readers, professionals who look for work within this field. Okay, so you should prioritize such journals that are actually indexed in the PubMed or such like indexing databases. Actually, most well-known journals are indexed, and also the lesser-known journals are actually most are indexed, but you should check before you choose one for publication that it is indeed indexed. So most journals nowadays, they ask for publication fees. They call it the article processing charge, and this can lie anywhere around from $600 to $2,500. Some journals also ask for $3,200 or the like. Okay, so publication fees come in a new way of publishing journals. In the past, you had a traditional model where the reader would finance journals through individual subscription fees or institutional subscription fees. So libraries would have a subscription for certain journals, and through these subscriptions, the journal would finance the publication fees and the article processing fees. Nowadays, much of the work is actually open access, so that all people, the scientific community can access articles much easier on the net. They do not need specific subscriptions to libraries. They can access many articles open access on the net. And for these open access publications, the author or the author's institution usually need to pay a fee. So sometimes this can be covered if you belong to an institution which pays a fee to kind of a publishing firm. Then all your publishing fees might be covered through the institutionally paid subscription fee. Okay, but most of the time this is not the case, and you have to cover the publication fee. So this $2,500 is a large sum of money which you might not have readily available, especially when you come from low and middle income countries. So you can look for what is called fee waivers. Fee waivers are, most journals have fee waivers in their publication fee policies, and you can look in these policies to see if you would qualify for such a fee waiver. So usually journals kind of look for the Hinari Code countries. The Hinari Code is the World Bank code that classifies countries into low income, middle income, and high income countries. Many journals give waivers to middle income country 50%. They waive 50% of the publication fees, and low income countries they waive 100% of the publication fees. Sometimes if your country is classed as a middle income country, but you feel actually because of geopolitical differences within your country, you would kind of qualify for maybe being a low income country. An example is Palestine, which is classed as a middle income country, but you have a very big difference between the West Bank, which is geographically completely separate from the Gaza Strip, where in the West Bank it is indeed a middle income country area, but the Gaza Strip is actually a low income setting. You can write something, a letter to the editor, and ask him to consider this, your case, to see if they would maybe grant you a full waiver. Other journals are called the hybrid journals. They have different access ways. So they have gold access, which includes full open access to your article and requires a publication fee. And then they have the green access, which is free, where you do not have to pay any publication fee, but it has restrictions for open access. So at first, so open access is only there for the subscribers to libraries or institutions. At least, and often this is for, and this also includes that you are not allowed to publish this article then on websites such as ResearchGate and the like. Often there's an embargo period of between 12 and 24 months, depending on the journal, on this sort of restriction. But after 12 to 24 months, this is lifted. So after this time has passed, you are able to publish your full article on ResearchGate and such, and academia and such websites. This can be done now, and this is called green access. So this is also, if there's no open access journal available that you could submit to, and where you could qualify for a fee waiver, this is also a very good way of funding your publication if you do not have other funds available to do so. The next thing we want to ask is the impact factor. The impact factor is a number which describes the impact of the journal in terms of citations and reads to the work that is published in them. It is quite a crude measurement, actually, because you might find in a journal one article which is very well cited and very well read, and therefore the impact factor goes up, but other articles maybe do not get the same sort of attention. However, people look at it. It has quite a big status within the industry. It is calculated on an annual basis and looks at the last year or sometimes 2 years, and often journals also publish a 5-year impact factor on their websites. Generally, above 1 is okay, but the higher the better. So as an example, the BMJ has an impact factor around 2. The journal called Hard, their impact factor is around 6. Other very high profile journals might reach 30 or even higher, but this is rare. The question is how so papers are usually searched online by keywords, okay? So it and not by the journal they are published in. Of course, papers that are published in a higher profile, papers that are published in a higher profile journal might get a bit more credibility, but generally they are accessed and also cited depending on if they were found in citation in publication indexes such as PubMed. So the impact factor in that sense should not be the only thing to guide you where to publish your article. The peer review process has a varying rigor. The standard journals that have been around a long time and that are credible and well recognized have quite a higher rigor in their peer review process. Nowadays, there's a large number of journals which is published online and they also have peer review processes, but they are less rigorous. The peer review process can be challenging to go through, but if it is rigorous, it can be challenging to go through it because the reviewers will have certain points for you to engage with and to certain points to make for you to improve your manuscript. But if you can look at these points, if you can engage with them and improve your manuscript, this is a very nice way of actually having a better publication in the end. In this sense, a rigorous peer review process can be challenging, but is also very valuable and will always add to your manuscript. Therefore, generally, I advise you to go for such journals that have a good peer review process. But nonetheless, other journals also have good quality articles published. So it's not the only place to find good articles. You find good articles also in lesser profile journals, and they also have their place. So we've already talked about open access a little bit, and I just want to make this a little bit clearer from what was said already. Some journals are only published online, such as the BMJ Open and the BMC series. All of their publishing is open access. Then you find hybrid journals that have a mixed access policies, where you can choose open access for a fee and an embargo period without a fee, where you can then after that have full rights to publish your article after 12 or 24 months, depending on the journal. Open access publishing is also always good because a broader audience will be able to actually read your work and look for it and kind of use it for their work as well. So it is open access the best mode of publication. So you have to look for the journal website, at the journal website, what kind of procedure or policies they have around open access, and if you could qualify for it, if you could get a waiver for your open access, your article processing charge, your fees, and if you will be able to publish your article open access with them. If you, as I said before, if you do not find an open access publishing possibility, then hybrid journals are a good alternative. Because you will, first of all, have got to pay a fee, and you can, after an embargo period of 12 to 24 months, also put your work, your article online on such websites as ResearchGate and Academia, where also people can access your work and have a look at it and read it without having to subscribe to the journal. So these are some features that you have to look for when you look for the journal. So first of all, you want to look at the scope of the journal. Does your article fit in their scope? Then you want to have a look what sort of publishing they offer. Will you be able to publish open access with them? And if so, could you get a fee waiver for this open access publishing? And then you also want to know, are they indexed? Is this journal kind of appearing in the PubMed and such indexing of journals? But what else do you want to check prior to submission? You have to check the instructions of authors for authors. So this is generally done after you have decided which journal you want to submit your article to. You have to kind of look at the instruction for authors. Every journal has its own little formatting guidelines for authors. And once you have decided which journal to submit to, you have to look at them. And you have to format your paper according to these sometimes quite rigid formatting guidelines. You have to follow these guidelines to the letter. Otherwise, your article will just come back to you and they will say, you have to look at this and this and this point. You have to change your article on those. So it's best from the start to follow this very clearly and to the letter, follow those guidelines to the letter. The instructions include the title, so what sort of title they want in this journal, the abstract, how many words, how it should be formatted, subheadings within the article, word counts, and how your references should be listed in the text as well as at the end of your article. It can actually take a rather long time to format your paper properly according to a journal, and you have to make your time for this. You have to take the time and follow this rigidly. Another thing journals want always when you submit an article to them is a cover letter. In this cover letter, you address the editor of the journal. And the editor will not read all the submissions to his journal because they get a lot of submissions every day. So the cover letter is an opportunity to tell the editor in very brief words about what your article covers and why you think your article would be a good asset and a good addition to his paper, and why it should be interesting for their readers. And this has to be very clear within the cover letter. Within every paper, you will also find a declaration setting section. Okay, declarations can vary from journal to journal. Usually they are located at the end of the paper and before the references, and they vary from journal to journal. They include a declaration on funding. So either you have to declare where you got funding for your work or that you had no funding. They also include conflicts of interests. They include acknowledgements, where you have the chance to acknowledge people who contributed to your work, but who have not, maybe who were not authors, who didn't kind of reach the status of authors, but who have significantly contributed to this article. And also you have to make a detailed listing of which contributions every author has made. And some other declarations vary from journal to journal. You have the data sharing declaration. All journals actually encourage authors to share all of their data. So to put your raw data into a repository where people can access and look at your raw data. So look at the raw data where you got your data from for this work that you publish, and how you made, so people can follow how you made the conclusion for this from your work. This is a very important aspect in transparency of research, and it gives you a lot of credibility if you can do that. Such sharing of data is very important, and there have been some incidences in the past, high-profile incidences, where this original data was re-evaluated, such as the term breach trial, which was done in the year 2000, looking at how breech babies should be delivered. And this term breach trial came to the conclusion that they should all be delivered by cesarean section. A second analysis of the original data of this term breach trial, which was published in 2006, saw this different and found a lot of weaknesses in the data that had been collected and also in the analysis of this data, and came to a different conclusion and said, actually, this is not the correct, maybe kind of conclusions that were drawn from that data that had been collected within the term breach trial. So such secondary analysis can be very revealing and give a better kind of look at especially high-profile work that maybe is important and changed practice worldwide and globally. So it doesn't matter if you make such a big high-profile work or a more kind of local and smaller work. It is always important to make arrangements for sharing of all of your raw data, so that people can kind of, that your research is transparent, and that one knows where your conclusions came from. Finally, I want to give you a word of caution to this publishing process. The acceptance rates in most journals, in most kind of higher profile journals, are around 50%, in some much less. So, for example, if you look at journals like the BMJ, or the Lancet, they have a less than 5% acceptance rates. So in other journals, it's much higher, where they maybe accept nearly 90% of submitted articles. What I want to tell you is, if one journal decides that your paper is not kind of a paper for their journal, this should not be too discouraging for you. You should then go and review your paper. Maybe sometimes they give you an idea why and what could be improved. And then you can take this advice and work on your manuscript and submit it to a different journal. Sometimes it's just because the scope of the journal does not cover your article really. And you should look for another journal where your article fits better with the scope of the journal. So what I'm wanting to tell you is that acceptance is not always is not is far from 100%, and if an article is rejected, this should not discourage you too much. You should submit it to a different article, to a different journal, to have another and have another go at it. The other thing I want to say is the peer review process, which comes after submission to the journal, to a journal, and which starts when the journal actually accepts your paper. So they think, it has got a potential, so we send it out to our reviewers. Usually you have 2 or 3 peer reviewers looking at your article, and they make a lot of useful suggestions that will improve your paper and your manuscript. So it is a really good opportunity to improve your paper, and you should take heed of that and make use of this process. This is just another word to take a good look at the advice that an editor or the peer reviewers give you, so you can improve your article and submit a better paper next time. The peer review process will also help you to develop as a researcher. You will learn different things within this process that will help you make, when you embark on your next research process, you will keep this in mind, and it will help you to be a better researcher in the future. So to just summarize the most important point of this lecture, you have to research the journals before you submit to any journal, okay, to make sure that you submit, that your article fits in their scope. You should make sure that you know the characteristics that are needed for submission to this journal, that you know that you research the instructions for our authors very carefully, and you adjust and format your paper accordingly. You have to write a convincing cover letter to the editor, which is short but tells the editor why your article is interesting for their readership. You should be prepared for disappointment and then for several submissions. And you should always seek agreement from all co-authors before you submit. Before you do any submission, you should get the agreement from all co-authors that they agree to this submission to this journal. And really, as ever, I want to thank you for listening to this lecture, and I want to encourage you and tell you that once you make the first step and you have been through this process for the first time, this process of submission to one journal, and then you repeat it with time, you will get better at it, and you will improve, and your articles will improve, and you will be able to handle reviewer comments better with time, as time goes on. So here too, I want to say that practice makes perfect. Thank you very much for listening to this lecture. I will publish a couple of more lectures within this field. One will be to do with ethical issues around research, and the other will be about quality improvement research and implementation sciences. Okay, I'm looking forward to for you to listening to those lectures as well. Thank you.